welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, and I am happy to be with you. I am happy to be here with episode 137. Proud to be a member of the Education Podcast Network. Check out all their great podcasts they got going on with Chris Nesi on his site. Certainly my friends at Voice Ed Radio Canada, Stephen Hurley and his group, happen to be on there as well. We're live on Facebook, and we are headed to iTunes and everywhere else we can. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining us. It is episode 137. A shout out to today's sponsor, Halvesies Cookies. I've been talking about them for a while now. A number of people have been ordering them using the discount code Murata15, and the word is out. The Halvesies Cookies are on fire. They're good stuff. David Maffei and his wife used to be in education, and now he's full-time doing this because it's an amazing business. He's doing good things. So check them out, Halvesies Cookies, HalvesiesCookieCompany.com, and use that discount code Murata15. You will get yourself a 15% discount. Hello, everybody. And again, thanks for tuning in. We are going to meet today's guest in a few minutes. He is Korrys Frank. He is a captain from United Airlines. He is an author. He is a parent and has become a friend of mine through my good friend, Ted Dabney, here up in Milford, Pennsylvania. Korrys is the author of 3 Feet to the Left, a new captain's journey from pursuit to perspective. He is, I don't know if he still is, he was the youngest captain in United. And what a great feat that is. And we're going to ask him about that. But we're going to meet Korrys here in a moment. I've flown a fair share of my time and always been intrigued by that. I scheduled Korrys for this week because if you are involved in education, you have probably had it up to here with talking about COVID and Corona and all the things that are going into schools. So I knew I wanted a break from talking about that, and I wanted to talk about a different aspect of leadership. So we're going to meet Korrys. If you are watching live, there's a number of you are. Please leave a question or comment for Korrys or I, and we'd love to connect live during the show. That's part of the cool aspect of this. But the opening segment is called, This is Your Captain Speaking, right? They have all those announcements on the plane and other people talking and the flight attendant and this person and that person. But then when the captain gets on, like, you know, he's got your attention or she's got your attention. And I always liked hearing from the captain, right? Even when I was a little kid and they gave you the little plane or whatever they used to do to make. Are we back? Yeah, we are back. Sorry, everybody. Let's refresh this. Korrys, I think I'm having some Wi-Fi problems here. That's not good. We're going to refresh this. All right. Are we back? I think we're back, and I apologize for that. I got some new Wi-Fi here in the house, but we are back. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, we got to get that squared away. My fault. But I was talking about the captain's voice, right? And when the captain comes on, male or female, always got my attention. And they always sounded so calm, cool, and collected, right? They never got on there frantic, like, hey, this is the captain, right? But they always just to me, right, sounded in control, knew very direct what they were saying, things like that. So a few notes that I wrote down about, again, hearing the captain's voice, their presence, right? How they made you feel when they talked, just their presence there, the tone of their voice, right? Some people were very dry. This is the other people kind of got you uplifted about the flight. If they needed you to hustle a little bit, getting on the plane, they made that thing about an on-time departure. The specific words they use, right? Very respectful towards the people on the plane there, but no ums, no ahs, no jumbling the words. They very direct. And then I like when they used humor, right? When they get all those people to laugh, I enjoyed that. I also enjoy when they come on there and say, hey, on the right side of the plane, you will see the blah, blah, blah. And they kind of tell you where you are and what's happening. I always enjoy when people do that. Sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't. I'm going to ask Korry why they do that and if he did that. But I always enjoyed hearing from the captain, right? A person who's in charge. And so just some thoughts about the captain's voice. And we're going to ask Korry about that. Let's bring him in to the program now. We're going to get him queued up and bring Frank here on to the program. And here he is. Korry, welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond.
How you doing? It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, really excited to talk to you. And again, welcome. Korry is the author of 3 Feet to the Left, a memoir and his story about becoming. Korry, am I right? Are you still the youngest captain in United, or you were the youngest captain in United?
I'm not anymore. I was at the time that the book took place, and for a period of about 2 years, which is purely a function of luck and timing to a large extent.
Yeah. Well, again, welcome. What did you think about that, Korry? Did you ever think about your voice coming over? This is the captain speaking. And do you intentionally put some extra presence in there, some extra firmness, tone,
some mustard, if you will, as you say in your book? I think as a captain, my goal when I use the PA microphone is to try to reassure people that they're in good hands, that we know what's going on and we're looking out for their interests, and trying to put people at ease. Because I figure, on any given flight, we've got people who are seasoned veterans of that travel all the time, whether it's for business or for pleasure. But we've also got a lot of people who may be on their first flight, or they're nervous travelers. And so I always try to make sure that I'm providing enough information that gives them clarity and gives them a complete picture of what's going on, but not to use the right words and be careful with the words they use so that it's comforting and people feel at ease.
Awesome. And Korry, let's get started with the book. What was your inspiration here in writing this? What made you get going with this? And it's a beautiful cover, and it's a read. It's not just a little pamphlet. You got a great story here. What inspired you to do it?
Well, it really started out with the advice of some captains that I had flown with, and who had told me, you should keep a journal of your first year because you won't believe what happens to you. And sure enough, I kept a journal and couldn't believe what happened to me, but not necessarily for the reasons that you may think. It really struck me more about the leadership elements of what it took to be a new leader who steps into a role where you're in charge. You're especially in my situation as being at the time the youngest at United, not ever necessarily, but just at that point in time. I knew that every time I came to work, a lot of times I'd be flying with people that were older than me, perhaps even had more experience than me, worked for different companies, came from the military, what have you. And that leadership journey of how do you engage these people, how do you bring them in, how do you really incorporate them into your team? Because at the end of the day, you're still a captain, you're responsible for everything that happens on that plane, good, bad, or indifferent. And I wanted to make sure I got that right. And as you know, from your leadership as a principal, there's a learning curve there.
Yeah. So tell me, what were some of those leadership lessons, Korry? What were some of those highlights, even from past your first year, that you carry with you now as you continue to grow in that role?
Yeah, well, I'd say, that there were a lot of them had to do with how a leader prepares, and how it's really subtle interpersonal type of skills, that the way you ask questions, the specific words you can use at times, that can make a huge impact one way or the other as to how you're how you're engaging the colleagues, or are you going to build a wall? Because in the airlines we talk a lot about CRM, that's crew resource management. And so for us, we want to make sure that we are a really cohesive, functioning team, and little things can really get in the way of that if you're not careful. So what I tried to do, and what I learned, and what I tried to portray in the book, is I tried to bring the readers along with me on that journey, as I made a lot of these aha moments, or brought my own experience with me, of course, but as I brought that into the cockpit and would learn, subtle nuances, I really think that was one of the biggest pieces here. How leaders set the tone, and how you communicate between the crew members, how first impressions really make a difference, how you make sure that even though you're the leader, and you're responsible for every decision, that doesn't mean that you have to make every decision.
And Corey, I was surprised. Again, our friend Ted Dabney is also a captain with United, and you got to know him. How often do you fly with the same person, right? Are you constantly building a new rapport, meeting somebody different every time you fly? Do they try to pair teams up together, that there is some built-in rapport already?
Well, I think that's one of the hardest parts for us. Is for example, at United. In my base in Newark, there's roughly 400 737 captains and 400 737 first officers, at least prior to the pandemic, that was the case. And so every single time that you show up to work, you're generally meeting someone new. Maybe you get to fly with somebody twice, but the number of people that I've flown with more than twice, I mean, it's a very, very small handful of people at that point. So there's a lot of things the airlines will do, obviously, from procedures and standardization, things like that. But then again comes to where you as a leader, you don't have time, a huge amount of time to make a good first impression. You don't have a lot of time to build rapport. So you really have to focus on how to do that well in a very short period of time, which to me, again, goes to some of those really subtle nuances about first impressions, about how you, like in my keynotes that I do for corporations and such, we talk a lot about the difference between positional authority and relational authority. Positional authority being like, you can see I'm a captain because I have 4 bars on my shoulders, that I have special wings, and I have what we call them scrambled eggs on the brim of our hat. So everybody knows that I'm the captain when I walk through the terminal, or at least for my particular flight. But there's a lot more power to be used when you use relational authority, where the people around you want to follow your lead, or want to do the things that you're asking them to do. So how you set that up to your advantage is one of the big things that I like to talk about in my keynotes.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I love listening to positional authority and relational authority. So Corey, in your opinion, what would be some of those techniques that you can do to strengthen those relationships and that relational authority?
Yeah, well, let me give you an example of, for example, flight attendants. And, we meet, and one of the first things you're going to do is have a briefing with the crew, explain how long the flight time is going to be, any weather or expected turbulence, things like that might be of interest to them, as well as a few other odds and ends. And one of the things that I like to do is, for example, I'm very cognizant of my physical presence when I'm doing that. A lot of times it takes place in first class. They're sitting down. So I have a choice. I could stand in front of them and I could tower over them looking down on the crew, or I could remove my jacket, I could remove my hat, I can sit down on the armrest, I can take up a much more casual demeanor and actually meet them on a physical level of where they are, asking questions, things that are just, to break the ice, whatnot. It shows that I'm interested in them, where they're going, what they, big plans for the layover, whatever, something, anything to build a little bit of rapport. And I recognize, I think most people in our profession do that. A lot of it is surface level when you're just meeting people. But, if I were to come in, for example, and say if the first thing that I asked was about, where are my crew meals or something like that, it puts the emphasis on me. It's not about us as a team, what they need, what I can do for them as a leader. It would totally flip-flop the dynamic around. So I think some of those pieces can become really key pieces.
And that's great to hear. So much about schools, and you've mentioned about similar aspects of our jobs and our roles. But I would think most people, Korry, think it's more of just the job. You get in the seat and to fly the plane, you shut the door and to make sure you get from point A to point B. But it sounds like it's much more. It sounds like building those relationships and earning the trust of those people, being in a dangerous situation. Let's say you're in the air where so many things can go wrong. It's awesome to hear that that's such an important part of your work.
Well, I remember when I was reading your book, you talked about making sure you take care of all the little pieces, for example, and that you address those little details and you don't let things slide. And I think, accidents, for example, are oftentimes the end result of a chain of events that take place. And when the investigative team would sit down and they pull all that data together, they'll backtrack all the way to the very beginning and they start to look for little tiny mistakes that the crews made. Did they cut corners here or there? And they call those patterns of deviance or normalization of deviance, where you as the leader are accepting like that some of these smaller things that you may not think matter much, they ultimately transpire down the road that, hey, they actually do make a big difference, and they set the stage for why you made mistakes at other times. So to me, I think a lot of that comes down to ensuring that we're maintaining a high standard, that we are not letting ourselves fall subject to some of those traps, and that we are addressing little things positively by setting the stage positively so that people understand expectations, and that that you as the leader, like one captain years ago, he told me that captains, they're like the conductor of an orchestra, like that. Your job is not, and much the same as a principal, your job is not to teach all of the different classes or to maintain the buildings or do all these, but you need all of those members on your team as you go around. Same thing is totally true for pilots, that as a captain, I need the team, I need to meld that team together, but I can't be the one to do it. So my job is to make sure that as the conductor of the orchestra, that we're creating, that the team is working in harmony, that we're making good music together, not that I have to necessarily do each and everything that goes along with the whole flight.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we're going off script here, Korry, because I'm loving the conversation. So tell me, part of my job, right, as a principal, if someone is not taking their job, not doing that role very well, I have to give them some feedback. I have to give them some redirection. So how does that conversation work? Does it happen in the middle of the flight? Are you calling somebody into the cockpit there with you? How are you giving that feedback to improve maybe some of those behaviors that if you feel need to be improved in that moment, or can it wait till, again, when the flight lands?
Well, I mean, there's certain things that again, and each business is different and has some of the same elements where, for example, we have standard operating procedures. So everyone understands that, A, B, C, and D are supposed to take place. And so if people start to not follow the standard operating procedures, then that's an element where as the captain, you can provide a little course correction. And I think that if you, again, to your point about minding the details, if you sort of make those points early on things that don't matter, you rarely have to get to the point where you have to make this giant course correction because somebody is way off the reservation, let's say. So I also think that there's you as a leader need to have some framework of context for where are we, when is the best time to have a discussion about something. Is it in the heat of the moment, or is it perhaps a few minutes later, an hour later, 2 hours later, and be like, I was thinking about something and was wondering if I could offer you some feedback. Things. I mean, it's all situated. Obviously, sometimes you don't have that choice. Sometimes you have to make a decision to go with it right out of the gate and correct things because it's a safety issue, whatever. But a lot of times if it's interpersonal, then you can also ask yourself, is this something like, for example, in my keynotes, one of the situations I like to put the attendees in has to do with a thunderstorm. And basically, which direction are you going to go around the thunderstorm? You're going to go to the left or the right? Well, the problem is we designate people as the pilot flying or the pilot monitoring. So if you're the monitoring pilot, typically you talk to air traffic control, you handle some of those elements, and the other pilot, we alternate back and forth so that both crew members stay current with their flying skills. Anyway, so I like to put people in a situation where you're the captain and you want to basically, let's say, go left around the thunderstorm, and your first officer says that he or she wants to go right. What are you going to do? And well, I like to walk people through the scenario. Like, you as the captain, you have the positional authority to clearly come in and say, no, we're going to go to the left. But there's going to be consequence to that, right? Because now, are you empowering this person? Do they feel like they have ownership in the flight? Or do they feel like, well, this captain is just going to step on my decisions? He or she may as well just go ahead and fly, because what does it matter what I really think? I like to think of it as, okay, well, what is the big picture? You as the captain, or the principal in your case, like, you're responsible for this big picture view. So how much fuel does it have? Yeah, maybe it adds a couple minutes to the flight if we go the direction that you don't think we should go, but your colleague thinks that they should go. What's the implication on fuel? What's the implication on time? And if all of those things are manageable, then why would you want to make the decision at that point, as opposed to getting past the threat, getting past that point of conflict, potential conflict, and then have the discussion of, hey, can you help me to understand why you wanted to go right back there? And listen, because perhaps your colleague could teach you something. Maybe they saw a threat that you didn't see. Or perhaps it's an opportunity to then have a coaching or mentoring session about how you saw things different, or coming to some kind of terms there. I think a lot of times leaders try to step in too soon. That I try to wait to the very last, as late as possible, as reasonably possible, prudent. Because the later that I am able to do that, the more opportunity I give the person with me, either the chance to teach me something or the chance to learn something for themselves, and you're still showing like mutual respect between your colleagues. You're not trying to come in right away and say, well, by God, I'm the captain, so this is what we're going to do.
Great points, Korry, and it is refreshing to hear that your mindset about always learning, listening to someone else's opinion. Certainly one of the 7 habits that I've been working on, seeking to understand before being understood. Again, there's a number of people watching live. Please leave us a question or a comment. Again, this is Korry Frank. He's an author, he's a father, he's a captain. And Korry, tell me a little bit about this speaking, right? You mentioned about the keynotes. Is that something that you enjoy doing as a leader yourself?
I really do. It's been a lot of fun. I've had the opportunity to speak at a number of corporate conferences, community events, of course, but also aboard celebrity cruises, actually, which was pretty interesting. People are so fascinated with aviation, and what I love is the ability to translate things that are unique for our industry and show them that they fit all different types of industries. And when you get people thinking, I mean, particularly this one keynote that I do is called Taking Command, how to soar to success by embracing your captain's mindset. And that whole program, I swear them in as honorary captains, and then we talk about the role of the captain, and then we go for a flight together where we evaluate, depending on time, anywhere from 3 to 5 different scenarios. And those scenarios, it creates like experiential learning that it puts them outside of their normal day-to-day mindset, and we leave each one of those with some takeaway that is aviation based, but that we then relate to how it can fit to literally any type of field whatsoever.
That's cool, and certainly your message of leadership and caring about others is a great one. And I'm sure you learned some of these from some of your mentors in your life. You talk a lot about your parents, specifically your father. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that relationship and what you learned from your dad, and you talk about your mom, medical technologist. My mom's watching now. She was a medical technologist as well. So there's another thing we have in common.
Yeah, so both my parents, what's cool is that they've totally reinvented themselves a number of times. And my mom started as a medical technologist, became an environmentalist at a local Army depot, and later went to law school and got her MBA and went to law school. So she's constantly reinvented herself. And my dad is definitely the same way, where he spent 20 years as a nurse anesthetist prior to becoming a certified financial planner, and now he runs the investment planning division for a big credit union in North Carolina. And I think what has been really cool, both them and their parents, in many ways, is that my family, we never had this like limiting belief of, well, you can only do so much. It's our family. It's like, well, you can do basically whatever you want. I mean, not maybe everything that you want. I'm not going to be a pro athlete or anything like that, but they say you never have to be fixed. It can always change. And I think that's a really powerful message, especially for a young person to hear. Is like, even if you've spent 15, 20 years in a career and you're unhappy, like, why would you want to keep being unhappy? Like, go do what you want. Maybe it means that you have to take a cut in income or something like that, but anything is possible, and are you willing to do it? With my father, I think one of the things that really has struck me is he will go to bat for you no matter what, if you're hardworking, if you're honest, and with him. And he just, because he believes everybody can do a lot of things, really cool things with their life, then he holds high expectations for them and wants to make sure that they are living up to those expectations. So he's been really good at being supportive, and also like keeping me going when I'd start to drift off a little bit here and there, just like any parent would.
Nice, beautiful to hear about that. And Gordon Bethune, the former CEO of United, was somebody who influenced you as well. What were some leadership points that you took away from that relationship?
Well, Gordon, I was an intern at Continental Airlines when Gordon was CEO, but I didn't, get to obviously know him very well. He did write a book, though. It's called From Worst to First, and it's a really great read. But what's so cool about Gordon is like he focused on people, and I think we sometimes forget as leaders that it's really not about you as the leader. It's about everybody else. And if you give them the tools to do what they need to do, and you cut through the red tape for them, and you get out of the way, then really great things can happen. So Continental had their backs to the wall in the early 90s, and Gordon came in and really transformed the entire culture to one of like trust and respect, and it really unleashed a very positive time frame for that airline. And he showed up. He went through bags on the ramp, and he talked to the gate agents. And he was just like you've written about in your book, with showing up in different areas of the school. Like that's what a leader has to do. And leaders, I guess they don't have to do that, but to me, it's the much more effective way to be a leader.
Well, it's an honor for me, Corey, that you read my book and are working the leadership points in there into the different aspects of life. And it could tell. You mentioned about preparation, and you could tell just you being here today, you've done that. And I appreciate that. Corey, when I refereed, they used to talk about, is it an art or is it a science, right? If this happens, a foul, it's a foul, right? And if this happens, it's a violation. Take the art out of it, right? It's a science. A happens, you got to do B. So my question is flying more of a science or more of an art, or where's the balance in there?
That's a great question. I mean, clearly there's a lot of science to flying airplanes. There's a lot of, you need to do certain things certain ways. The procedures and all of those kind of things are very much, black and white. There is a huge amount of art to it, though, I think, as well, especially when you watch someone who, let's say it's a really gusty landing or something like that, and you watch them work in the controls, and you can tell, who really feels like they're not one with the airplane, but pretty much where you start to anticipate, you're so comfortable with the airplane, it's so smooth, and you can anticipate the changes, and it's really neat to watch somebody like that fly the airplane. Yeah. And then there's people that are much more mechanical, and they get the job done. Everybody gets the job done within the limits. It's just, I like some of the artistry of it as well.
Well, and again, leads to one of my favorite movies. And I don't know if pilots like talking about flying movies, but Tom Hanks and The Miracle on the Hudson and that story and his name's escaping me.
Sully.
Sully. Yeah, there you go. And that story of how he did that and what he trusted his gut and that showed a lot of art and confidence in that setting. Is that a movie that you were like, oh my God, it's a great story? What was your thoughts on the movie?
A lot of aviation movies. When you're anytime Hollywood, I'm sure the education movies are the same way for you, or especially the sports movies with your experience as a referee, like some of the way that they portray things. Anytime you're really close to something, you start to go, well, they didn't do this right, or they didn't do that right. I actually thought that Sully was one of the better aviation movies that's out there. I thought they did a great job of bringing you into the cockpit, which is really what I tried to do with my book too, and making it relatable. Like it was technical enough that it felt real, but not so technical that it flew over your head. So you've heard Sully, Tom Hanks portraying Sully and going through the different checklists and all of those kind of things. And I think that added a lot of, it was an actual Airbus cockpit. That's always a rub to me when they make these fake cockpits that look bogus. But so some of it, I'm sure, obviously was dramatized. But I thought that actually was really good and insightful into what we do. You mentioned it. I'm trying to think where it was in your book that you talked about, like how people, they're going to be able to look back and they can criticize, decision you made. I think it was one of them was you told a story about a fire drill, that happened.
Yeah, the mustard.
In the wintertime, and you made it a command decision. In the moment, you thought that it was best to do X over Y, and I won't spoil it for the people who read the book. And then as a captain, I mean, the discomforting, the uncomfortable part is that that they're going to look back at you and they're going to question everything you did. And that's just part of the nature of being a leader. But you always have that right as a leader to, or at least as a captain, to use your command authority, your emergency authority, and do what you need to do to address the situation. Sully, I thought, did a real good job of, like, this was split-second decisions, right? And most of the time, if this great aviation analogy is never let an airplane take you somewhere that your mind hasn't been 5 minutes beforehand. The point being, thinking ahead. You don't have time to be thinking in the moment of like, oh, well, what should I be doing? So Sully was faced with a very difficult situation. He made some decisions. They turned out well, but of course, people are going to question that. And you're going to be the subject of investigations. And then those people are going to be making these decisions, looking at how you made this decision. They're going to have all the time in the world to do it. But you have a very short period of time. When that fire drill, when that fire alarm went off, you had to make a choice. And we could sit around and we could talk about whether that was the right choice, the wrong choice, but you had to make a choice. And there was probably going to be criticism no matter what. So you use your knowledge, you use your experience, you make the choice, and then you move on.
Awesome points. Again, the stories. I love what you said there. Say that again about the a pilot should never, fire ahead.
Yeah, they should never let an airplane take them somewhere their mind hasn't been 5 minutes beforehand.
I love it. That is an awesome quote. Korry, the aviation, I don't have to tell you, but that your industry has been deeply impacted by what is happening in our country with coronavirus and the closures and people's fears. Where would you say now? Are we starting to rebound? Are people feeling more comfortable? Where would you say your industry is at now? And like, when can you get back to work like it was?
I tell you what, I wish I could be the one to tell you that. Unfortunately, I haven't flown. It's crazy to say this, but I think it was the 17th of March. Was the last time that I flew, and because it's of coronavirus. And then we have to maintain currency. So after a certain amount of time, I lost my currency. So now I have to go back to training, and I'm just waiting until they determine whether I'm going to get trained again on the 737 or some other airplane. So this is definitely a big challenge for our industry. But I'd also say, there's a lot of opportunity in this moment too, that done correctly, crises bring people together. They allow people to think outside the box and explore. Think about Zoom, for example. Your industry is using some of those telecommuting technologies like that the teleconferencing technologies that would they have ever been widely adapted beforehand? But now people are forced to try and evolve and adapt into some of these new technologies. Some of that is going to stick, some of it's not. But because they're being forced out of their comfort zone, they're being forced to get creative. When the dust settles, and people love to travel, business needs to travel. Maybe some business travel gets to just take place via Zoom, but you got to be in person to build relationships. If you're going to go to a ball game or you're going to have a dinner with somebody, you can't do that via over the web. So I think that the airlines are going to change. They're going to evolve. It's a rough season, no doubt. But if I was starting out, this is perhaps one of the best seasons for a new pilot, because they don't need the jobs to be there today. They need the jobs to be there 5 or 10 years from now. And the industry just hit a giant pause button. So my heart really goes out to all of the employees. We're all feeling this in some form or fashion, but a lot of airline employees are probably going to end up being furloughed, and they're going to have to make some really big adjustments to their families. I'm hoping that in somehow, some way, there's opportunities that come from this season, even for them as individuals.
Yeah. Well, we wish you the best, Korry, and I hope you get back to flying soon. And I know they've made a lot of improvements in terms of the air quality and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's probably one of the cleanest times you'd ever be on an airplane.
Well, I hope to get you back on there soon. And Korry, you shared a lot of leadership today. We're going to have to start taking this flight to our descent for landing. Before we get to rapid fire, was there anything else you wanted to share? There's a ton of leadership tips in here and a ton of great stories. Again, this is Korry's book here, and I got to finish it like you finished mine. I haven't done the whole thing, but anything else you want to share from it?
I'm actually looking at what I had pointed out from yours, because you had a lot of really good. Yeah, I think we talked about a lot of these. I think the only thing I would take from overall is that this really is a journey, and then we all kind of evolve through our experiences, and everything is teaching us one way or the other something along the way. So as your listeners are going through the challenges that they're facing with COVID, as pilots who may be watching or educators, be looking at what is the potential how is this building for you? Because it can build. It will build positively in your life too. And somehow, if we can embrace the mindset of that this is a journey and that these moments are building us towards something, I think we all would do well.
Well said, Captain. Let's get to rapid fire. We're going to take out the landing gear and bring us home. We have the airport in our sights here. So rapid fire. These are quick answers, Korry. You mentioned my book a lot, and if it's not, it's okay. But what was the last book you read?
Well, I did read yours, but I also just finished last night Dan Brown's Inferno. The last book that I read. Excellent story there. How about movies? Last movie you saw? My wife and I watched Hamilton on Disney Plus. Not really a movie, but that just sort of.
Yeah, it counts. Did your daughter watch it? I know she's watching. You want to give a shout out to your daughter?
At least parts of it.
How old is your daughter?
She's 4.5. 4.5 and a quarter, she would say.
Reagan,
yeah.
Reagan, sorry. Okay. Well, hi, Reagan, and your dad did a great job today. And we watched Hamilton a second time because we had to process it. It was going so fast, but we loved that too. Yeah. Korry, you've been all over the place. Where's your favorite place to travel?
Well, I have a soft spot in my heart for Chicago, having lived there for several years. So that's always enjoy being able to pass through there. Anywhere in the mountainous West, American West, I love going over there. Internationally, it's hard to beat in my book either London or Berlin. They're so rich with history and interesting aspects of their cultures, and so really enjoy those locations.
Are you in love with the Chicago deep dish pizza?
I do like deep dish, yeah.
Yeah, I was blown away. I'm a New Yorker, and the thin crust. I love New York pizza, but I was blown away. I
feel like you don't have to pick one over the other. Like to me, New York pizza is great for if you're, in my opinion, it's quick. It's all right. I want to get a bite to eat.
Get a slice.
Yeah. Chicago deep dish is I'm going to go to a restaurant. I'm going to sit there for 40 minutes while it bakes and then enjoy it, and then probably regret it, an hour.
Something that motivates Korry Frank.
Something that motivates me. I would say inspiring people to do big things. I love seeing light bulbs click on with these conferences that I've had the chance to do, and to see people realize that they can spread their wings and they really can soar if they set their mind to it.
Awesome. How about something that gets under your skin? You seem like a really professional, respectful man. What's something that bothers you?
Well, it's funny that you asked the question the way it is, because I would say that not getting basic levels of respect is definitely a hot button for me.
And you see that sometimes on planes. People act a fool sometimes.
They do. Sometimes I was reading your book and I thought, man, you don't have to answer every question right then. And when you said about asking people to calm down, and then I was, man, I should probably try to do that sometimes too, because you get people and they're upset, they're agitated. You need to listen. You need to let them feel heard for sure. Yeah. But sometimes maybe just a little space is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Best thing about flying?
by far the views. I mean, you just can't beat a sunset over the mountains or maybe down in the Caribbean. They're both, I miss that tremendously. I'll look up off my back porch, some of these thunderstorms roll through, and I'm like, they're pretty at sunset here on the ground, but they're just spectacular when you're up airborne.
How about the worst thing?
But I would say the unpredictable nature of the schedules and backside of the clock flying and things. It's just the nature of the beast. You're going to work in the middle of the night. Sometimes you're going to be gone over holidays, school, your kids' events, things. It's not a matter of if you're going to miss things, it's what you're going to miss. And, there's elements of that definitely are a drawback.
I know Captain Ted is watching too. He keeps missing the fire pits at my house, Captain. We need you back on there. Corey Frank, it's easy to say, but how often do people misspell your name?
I would say it's almost every single time. I get a kick out when you're on the phone with somebody and you're explaining your name to like a marketer or whoever it is, on the other side, and you say, my name's Corey, and then I say with a K, and then you hear like tap, 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 tap as they're hitting the backspace button to go backwards. So.
I love when the captain comes out and says goodbye. Is that a requirement? Do they have to come out and do that? Or is that just something that they do in the business?
I don't believe it's a requirement for United. For me personally, there's nothing more rewarding. I love standing there and you get to see every single passenger that has been on your flight. And it really drives home the point of that these people are placing a tremendous amount of trust in you. And so that really does drive it home for me, seeing that. I love watching it, especially the parent. I feel for the parents. I've been there. I know my wife has been there. So we're dragging a tired kid, especially an infant. You got all the gear and everything. I'm like, oh, goodness gracious.
Thank God you got us there safe.
Yeah.
If you were to become the next CEO of United, you would fill in the blank.
I think, earlier I mentioned about that this is an opportunity and that through this crisis, I would be focused. I'd be focusing on how can we bring people together despite the challenges? How can we think outside the box and innovate so that not only do we survive this crisis, but that we can really thrive through the crisis.
Nice use of surviving and thriving. Well done. With all this time not flying, your next book is, do you have something on the hopper, Corey?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how this plays out. Obviously, if I end up having to go back to first officer, which is quite likely, it would make sense to write 3 feet back to the right. I actually think there'd be some really good, in many ways, I think that could be an even more compelling book than the first book because, how do you lead when you're not in command? I think there's a lot of us that are in that situation, whether you're managing up or managing down, and there's different tools and tricks to both of that. So I think that's definitely on my horizon. I'm also looking at a novel that has really not much at all to do with aviation. It has much more to do, loosely based around my grandfather's unpublished manuscript. So stay tuned for that one.
Nice. Cool. Best purchase under $100 that has had a great impact on your life?
You shared these questions with me ahead of time, and so it's my journal. It's cheap, you can get them anywhere, but the creating the daily habit of writing every day, and the number of times that I've gone back to, well, what did we do on X, Y, or Z day? It's really interesting to think about how your mindset shifts. My grandmother, she wrote diaries from 1943 to 46, and then again from 1969 to 2007. And so she's left our family with a really great historical record. And it's interesting, whether anybody in my family would want to read my journals, I don't know. But it's interesting just as on our own, like to when you have to put your thoughts out there and you think through them, it's been I found it to be really rewarding.
That's beautiful. I'd love for you to learn more about that one day. Something about Corey Frank that people don't know about.
Well, you'll like this one. When I was in second grade, I actually taught class one of the days. That this was me getting myself in trouble in a lot of ways because kept talking in the background, and the teacher said if I knew so much, then maybe I should just write a lesson plan and teach the class. So, being me, I wrote a lesson plan and then presented it to her, and we got it approved. And the next day, I taught the class. I can't remember what we taught or what I taught, but I do remember that when we got to clocks and reading time, and that really threw me for whatever reason. So that was where it all went off the rails for me. I do remember that part, but some of my elementary school friends, they still bring it up.
I'm sure it was well prepared, is my guess. That's a funny story. And Korry, you've been a great representation today of leadership, your family, and I know you're not speaking for United, but certainly representing your organization. But what would be a message for those that are still afraid to fly? They want to go somewhere, but they're still afraid. What would you say?
I would say that this is a great time. The price is right, that's for sure. It's the cleanest you're ever going to find these planes, and and I'm just speaking myself personally here, but this whole COVID experience, the one thing that really bugs me with it is that I feel like we've taken a lot of the humanity out of being human. That to me, we've got to find a way to stay connected, and this world is to be lived and experienced in a safe way, of course, but there's so much out there, and we don't know how much time we all have. So we can't. I would love to see all of us, and this is again just me personally. I'd love to see us take more of an aspect of like, how can we, even if it has to be socially distant, there's so much of this world to experience. It's a true gift for us to get out there and see it, and I'd love to see more people doing that.
Beautiful. Again, this is Korry Frank. Here's his book here. And Korry, I know you're giving some donations from the proceeds here for a period of time there, but can you share that for those that do want to make a donation? I know you have a scholarship as well as another part. So can you share that if people did want to make a donation?
Yeah, so I'm of the revenues that I get as an author from the book sales, then I'm donating 10% to the Jason Dahl Scholarship Fund, which is Jason Dahl was one of the captains on a flight on 9/11, and he has established a scholarship. And then also to the 10% to the United We Care Employee Relief Fund, where I'm a member of the board of directors for that employee relief fund that helps people in need. So. I wouldn't have had the experience without United, so it just seemed like the right thing to do to give back a little bit.
Awesome. And Korry, what would be the best way if people wanted to send you a check? Can they do it through your website, or is there a way that they can, get something to you?
Well, I don't honestly know the Jason Dahl. I think it's Dahl Fund. I don't remember if it's .org or .com, but you can make direct donations to the Dahl Fund.
Okay.
The United We Care is more of an internal charity, so I'm not sure if there actually is at present a way for the outsiders to make donations.
Yeah. Sure, and what if they wanted to get in touch with you after if they're interested in having you speak?
Sure.
Or learn more about flying? What would be the best way someone could get in touch with you? And again, if they wanted to give a donation there, they can get it to you somehow. But
sure.
In terms of connecting with you on social media or such?
Well, my website is korryfrank.com. That's KORRYFRANKE.com. And on Instagram and LinkedIn, I'm at Korry Frank. And then on Facebook, I'm at KMF Leadership. Through there. So, and I obviously respond to messages. My email is Korry@korryfrank.com for all of that. So yeah, and this is great too. Like I wouldn't have, prior to reading your book, I wouldn't have realized there was so many parallels between being a principal and being an aviator. And I think there's there's a lot of overlap in a lot of industries, but that's obviously just one more of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all about leadership. It's all about relationships. And you did a fantastic job. I got this flight. We're delayed here a few minutes. We went over, but I really, truly enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So again, this is Korrys Frank. Check out his book on Amazon and check out his website at korrysfrank.com. Korry, thanks so much. I'm going to cue up this music and get us landed here. And I hope you didn't mind my pilot references throughout the show.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate it.
All right, let's cue this up here, and we're going to think about it, Korry. This is Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. It was show number 137. Again, thank you to our sponsors here, Have These Cookies. Check them out. Marana 15 is our discount code. Have a great opening to your schools, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Korry, thanks so much.